Good afternoon. It is Michael here with you. We're going to be going through Reality Hacker. Wow, definitely not going to be going through Reality Hacker. I mean, technically we are, but today we're going to be going through chapter 25 of The Power of Awareness by Neville. And if you're wondering why I have different clothes on all the time, it's simply because I don't do all of these in the same day. As I'm sure you understand, these can be some pretty long videos. And yeah, it's actually taken me a while to finish it, but we are almost there. We are almost to the end, getting through chapter 25. We're going to start that out today. So, a miracle is the name given by those who have no faith to the works of faith. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The very reason for the law of assumption is contained in this quotation. If there were not a deep-seated awareness that that which you hope for had substance and was possible of attainment, it would be impossible to assume the consciousness of being or having it. It is the fact that creation is finished and everything exists that stirs you to hope, and hope, in turn, implies expectation, and without expectation of success, it would be impossible to use consciously the law of assumption. Evidence is a sign of actuality. Thus, this quotation means that faith is the awareness of the reality that you assume, a conviction of the reality of things which you do not see, the mental perception of the reality of the invisible. Consequently, it is obvious that a lack of faith means disbelief in the existence of that which you desire. Inasmuch as that which you experience is the faithful reproduction of your state of consciousness, lack of faith will mean perpetual failure in any conscious use of the law of assumption. In all the ages of history, faith has played a major role. It permeates all the great religions of the world. It is woven all through mythology, and yet today, it is almost universally misunderstood. Contrary to popular opinion, the efficacy of faith is not due to the work of any outside agency. It is from first to last an activity of your own consciousness. The Bible is full of many statements about faith, of the true meaning of which few are aware. Here are some typical examples. Unto us the gospel was preached, as well unto them, but the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. In this quotation, the us and them make clear that all of us hear the gospel. Gospel means good news. Very obviously, good news for you would be that you have attained your desire. This is always being preached to you by your infinite self. To hear that which you desire does exist, and you only need to accept it in consciousness, that's good news. Not mixing with faith, means to deny the reality of that which you desire. Hence, there is no profit or attainment that's possible. O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? The meaning of faithless has been made clear. Perverse means turned the wrong way. In other words, the consciousness of not being what you want to be. To be faithless, that is, to disbelieve in the reality of that which you assume, is to be perverse. How long shall I be with you means that the fulfillment of your desire is predicated upon your change to the right state of consciousness. It is just as though what you desire is telling you that it will not be yours until you turn from being faithless and persevere to righteousness. As already stated, righteousness is the consciousness of already being what you want to be. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Egypt means darkness, or belief in many gods or causes. The king symbolizes the power of outside conditions or circumstances. He is your concept of yourself as already being what you want to be, enduring as seeing him who is invisible. Means persisting in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled. Thus, this quotation means that by persisting in the assumption that you already are the person you want to be, you rise above all doubt, fear, and belief in the power outside of conditions or circumstances, and your world inevitably conforms to your assumption. The dictionary definitions of faith. The assent of the mind or understanding to the truth, unwavering adherence to principle, are so pertinent that they might have well been written with the law of assumption in mind. Faith does not question, faith knows. Wow, what a question. What a question, what a chapter, what a comment, what a bunch of comments. You know, I feel like if we were to really dive into this, we could sit here for a couple hours. But what I want to focus on in this chapter, ultimately, is the first part, okay? We'll go over it again and then we'll dive into it. So if there were not a deep-seated awareness that that which you hope for had substance and was possible of attainment, it would be impossible to assume the consciousness of being or having it. It is the fact that creation is finished and everything exists that stirs you to hope, and hope in turn implies expectation, and without expectation of success, it would be impossible to use consciously the law of assumption. Evidence is a sign of actuality. Thus, this quotation means that faith is the awareness of the reality that you assume, a conviction of the reality of things which you do not see, the mental perception of the reality of the invisible. Okay? I really love this because what he talks about here is that there's not a dim hope here when it comes to using the law. When we're using the law of assumption, it's not that I'm hoping this thing that I am imagining will someday come to pass. It is I am enjoying the tonalities, the feelings of my desires being fulfilled, knowing that I am the source from which all of this universe comes to live and move and have its being. And from that place, I understand that creation is not only finished, but everything already exists. And I want to make note here of how what stirs us to hope, what stirs us when a desire comes to mind, when we get excited when a desire comes to mind, what stirs us to hope is that creation is finished. The reason we get excited about a desire is because it is finished. It's not just because it's going to add to our life or something of that nature. It's because creation is finished and we are, with desire, becoming increasingly aware of that which already is. And this is a super important point to get across here, because we're not manifesting things that do not exist. We are becoming more and more aware of what already does exist, because you fundamentally are imagination. You are all consciousness, infinite in nature, literally, no limits. Everything in the universe is yours. But when we talk about yours, we're not talking about the individual. We're talking about imagination, and you are a facet of that imagination, while you are also all imagination itself. And entering into a state with all sense of naturalness and conviction ultimately permeates itself into your reality. But until that state is entered into with the full naturalness and sense of conviction, the state will not quite as much permeate itself in your environment, right? The reason being is because we have not assumed a new concept of ourself. And the reason we have not assumed a new concept of ourself is because we've been focusing on the desire rather than the self-concept and state that leads to desire, right? This is the whole thing here. Until I assume a new concept of myself, I cannot ascend to a higher level. And really, it's like you can spend the rest of your life assuming new concepts of yourself, or you can just come to the fundamental fact that you are all imagination, that you are virtually, literally, definitively infinite and freaking perfect in every single way, and that all of creation in all of its vastness is not something you are inside of, but rather something that is inside of you. And by accessing new states of consciousness, you reveal to yourself greater and greater portions of creation that already exist, right? So again, we cannot help but emphasize here that we are not a limited being having infinite experiences. We are an infinite being temporarily experiencing a seeming sense of limitation. And by coming back to the fullness of our being, living from this place of being all imagination, understanding that the mind-body complex is but a manifestation of our true self, we can begin to better leverage and access this law. Because the truth is, the law is not anything we are unfamiliar with. The law is something you have been using your entire life, albeit unconsciously. So here, all we want to do is begin to understand why things happen the way they do, how they begin to unfold the way they unfold, and ultimately, if you didn't even believe that the thing you wanted was possible to get, it would literally be impossible to assume the consciousness of having it or being it. The fact that you can actually imagine yourself being it and having it literally means that you are it. You couldn't imagine yourself being it or having it if you weren't it. And the reason you can imagine yourself being and having it is because you are not you. You are imagination pretending that you are you for a short while. I absolutely love what Neville dives into here. You know, I want to dive into this short section here of scripture where he says, the Bible is full of many statements about faith, of the true meaning of which few are aware. And here are some typical examples. Unto us the gospel was preached, as well as unto them, but the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it, right? In this quotation, the us and them make clear that all of us hear the gospel. In other words, what he's saying here is that everybody hears it. Everybody's going to hear this stuff at one point. But the ones who make this work are the ones who hear and act with faith, who take it 100% all in all the way, right? And we constantly hear Neville admonish us that you absolutely cannot move into a new state permanently without crowding out all other ideas out of consciousness. In order to fully move into a state, it has to consume our being. And I'm talking even about the 2% little voice in the back of our head that doubts and tries to analyze and say, well, this isn't real, blah, 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 because that voice is actually our perceived limited self that's trying to get us to rationalize some sense of security to make sure that the body's safe. And I respect it. You can respect the voice that says, no, you don't deserve this, or no, you don't need it. Doesn't mean I need to accept it, but I can respect and I can understand where it comes from. And this is so important, man. This is so important here that you begin to understand yourself. Because if you don't understand yourself, if you don't understand why you do what you do, it's going to be impossible to put a new structure, a fundamental acting into place, right? Because what we're doing here is we're not just rewriting a portion of our lives, we're literally rewriting how we process the world, how we process our seeming self in relation to the rest of the world, and ultimately processing how we hear and what we do with what we hear, right? It is really, really, really hard for us to actively use the law as long as we are convinced that we are limited and we are separate from the thing that we want. It really is going to be an uphill battle for you as long as you believe that you are separate from the thing that you desire. But when you move into that place of union emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you cannot help but move there physically, because that's what this is. Right? We are literally led by our beingness. As Neville says, you have total free will to choose the state of consciousness that you're going to enter into. You don't have free will to choose the actions and results that come from that state of consciousness, right? This is, you do, but your availability of what it can be done will be limited. It'll be seen and limited to that state of consciousness in that situation, right? So if I can come back to this place where I'm tangibly in my body aware of the infinite being that I am, and really focusing on living from here as much as possible, you'll find that the joy, the bliss, the satisfaction that comes from living there actually translates into every area of your life. But it's not about just doing it in the morning and then doing it at night. It's literally about living your life with this embodied, living your life with the understanding in your nervous system that you are an infinite being experiencing a finite reality. And when it comes to this, right, the efficacy or the efficiency of your faith is not due to the work of anything outside of yourself. It is from first to last an activity of your own consciousness, and understanding that your consciousness is a portioned out, or really it's not even portioned, but portioned out segment of infinite consciousness, right? Even though you seem to be limited, you are truly infinite, right? You're not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. This is so tremendously important for you to understand, because once you begin to understand this, you will begin to understand what it means to step into a state and maintain it, right? That's what makes this so amazing, is that when we leverage faith, we're not looking at hope. We are looking at certainty. I'm not saying, well, I think I'm going to get what I want. I'm saying I know that I am going to experience the outcropping of this state, because I know that I am all imagination, and I know that every state that I enter into becomes the consistency and the substance of my experience. That being said, that kind of rounds out our chapter today. Man, what a power chapter, right? What a power chapter. Next chapter is 26. We're almost to the end, but thank you for hanging out with us today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, go ahead and like it, subscribe, do the thing. Make sure if you want to go deep, reserve your seat at our Power of Awareness Limitless Assumption Retreat. We're going to be going through all the tenets of the Power of Awareness, every single chapter, full-fledged discussions. We've created a custom journal for you. It's going to allow you to really take the material apart, outline it, and integrate it really successfully. Super excited about that. You can find that in the description. But thank you again so much for joining us. If you have any other questions, comments, feedback, I love to hear it, love to see it, and I'm looking forward to talking to you soon.